Te maramatanga, kia tau mai te rangi Māori e, kia tau mai te kaha me te aroha mō tēnei kaupapa, hui e, whai ki e. We have apologies from Councillor Kinnamonth. Everyone else is present. We have Councillor Greening and Councillor Hill on Zoom. Someone move the apology for Councillor Kinnamonth, please. Moved Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Mailing. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. It has now. Those with microphones on, just turn them off. All good, thank you. We don't have a public forum. Are there any declarations of interest? If not, we need to move the late item. Moved Deputy Mayor Bryant, seconded Councillor McKenzie. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Just before I come across to Dwayne and Sandra to introduce the first item, I know there's been a number of queries that have come through by email. This is one of those processes which is very iterative. There's a lot of people involved. Obviously, Audit New Zealand is a key player, and it does kind of come down to a lot of quite last minute discussions and conversations. So I'd just like to thank everyone who's been involved, from the council staff, from Audit New Zealand, to get us to this point so that we have the opportunity to approve the consultation document and the statement of proposal for schedule fees and charges at today's meeting, and then go out to the public for their feedback. So thanks to everyone who's been involved. I know there's a lot of hard work goes in behind the scenes to get to this point. With that, I'll come across to Dwayne, Sandra, to introduce the schedule of fees and charges item.
Third time lucky. Good morning, Mayor and councillors. I largely take my report as read, which seeks your approval to adopt the statement of proposal for public consultation purposes. Fees and charges reduce the amount required to fund activities from rates, so that people who directly benefit from the services or activities can be directly identified and charged. Some of the key changes since the last schedule is that it has been legally reviewed by Simpson Grierson. We've put in the related legislation for setting fees and charges. There's new debt collection notes. Most fees and charges have increased by 10%. The reasons for increases significantly over 10% are outlined in the summary of the statement proposal. The general staff charge rate has also increased by 10%. Building insurance and resource consents have different hourly rates to reflect staff expertise and use of contractors. And you would have recently seen a comparison with the top of the South councils, although they're quite difficult to compare. And there's a new charging regime for the airports. I'll leave it at that, and happy to answer any questions, or other staff are here available to do that.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Any questions in relation to the schedule of fees and charges? Or someone prepared to move? Again, noting that it's going up for consultation. So it's moved, Deputy Mayor Bryant. Is there a seconder? I know, Councillor Greening, you've got your hand up, so we'll come to you. Seconded Councillor Butler. So it has been moved and seconded. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, so my question just relates to what is the current inflation rate at the moment?
Through the chair, can you hear this? It's a somewhat difficult question to answer because what we're looking at is reflecting back on the last 12 months when resetting charges rather than looking at the current inflation rate or the one projected for the next 12 months. I'm sorry, our finance team are a little bit thin on the ground this morning who probably would have their, the answer at their fingertips. I do not.
Right. Okay, well, I don't think it's 10%. And my impression is that forecasting, Reserve Bank are forecasting to head towards 3% in the next 3 to 5 years. So I do think this is quite significant. I do think it's out of kilter. I do think it's excessive, and I don't think it's affordable. And this is nothing new that I haven't said before. Again, I'm going to be in disagreement with what's been proposed. I won't be supporting it. I realise it's for consultation. This is what you're indicating is council's preference. It's certainly not my preference. I think there are other avenues for council to bring down costs, and the same goes with the consultation document. I appreciate that the pressures on council are substantially due to a $100 million blowout on the Waimea Dam, but we've had some opportunities, at least raised, but not necessarily fully explored, to make some savings. So I'm not generally in support of this. So I'll be voting against it. And just for clarity for the public, I'll call it division so that everyone knows where people stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. It's been moved and seconded. If there are no further speakers, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. I didn't catch that. Okay. The joys of a division. Please, Elaine, could you take us through the names?
Deputy Mayor Bryant.
4.
Councillor Butler. 4. Councillor Dakey.
4.
Councillor Dowler.
4.
Councillor Ellis. 4. Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Mayor King.
4.
Councillor Mackenzie. 4. Councillor Mailing.
4.
Councillor Maru.
4.
Councillor Shalpras.
4.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Carried 11-2.
Thank you. Councillor Maru also online, so apologies for not acknowledging you earlier, Councillor Maru. Right, thank you. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Sandra. Alan. So I'll just also note that, as was touched on in the previous discussion, the finance team has been somewhat impacted by COVID and other family-related health challenges. So they are thin on the ground, unavoidably, unfortunately. So Margie, I know you're up there, so and hopefully Dwayne, Alan, Leonie and other senior managers will be able to cover any key questions that come up. With that, I will hand over to you, Alan, to introduce this next stage, which is the adoption for consultation of the consultation document.
Right. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and councillors. As you know, we've all been working on the long-term plan for the last 15 months or so. We've talked about many aspects of it and discussed those, and in December you made some preliminary decisions around the long-term plan. Of the last few weeks, our consultation document, our policies and our supporting information has been through a thorough review, thorough audit, and the late circulation of the consultation document at the end of last week was as a result of that audit continuing right up till the end of the week. We've been notified of one potential problem with a what's the word I'm saying? May have swapped a couple of figures on page 15 of the consultation document. So I don't know whether you want me to take you to that in detail. With not having finance staff available this morning, we haven't been able to check whether that's right or wrong. So it's one of those that we'll resolve with through the Mayor and Chief Executive's delegation after the meeting. So I guess we're now at the point where we really need the consultation document, the concurrent consultations and the supporting information to be made available to the public, and so that we can get feedback from our community get through that process so that we can get to the point of adopting the long-term plan by the end of June within the statutory timeframes. And really with that, I'll take the report as read and happy to deal with any questions.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Are there any questions of Alan just in terms of kind of the process before we get into the more sort of standard discussion? Being that there is not, I'll just come across to Audit New Zealand and their representative, our auditor, John Mackey. John, is there anything you'd like to say at this point?
Yes, I would. First of all, I would like to thank the management and staff for the constructive way they've worked with us. It's been a challenging process to prepare the LTP this time round. As you're all aware, there's been major change going on in local government. So it's been a moving feast. So that's required a lot of extra work from both the council and from ourselves. But it's pleasing that we've got to the point where we are, and I can elaborate on where we are and how we got there briefly on the major items, but at whatever time you want me to do that.
I think it's probably as good a time as any now, John, while you have the floor, and if you'd like to take us through those or any comments, feedback or issues that Audit New Zealand have.
So I signed the report on behalf of the Auditor General, so there's processes and standards that need to be followed, so that I'm not doing that without him being comfortable. So one of those processes is if the audit report is non-standard, then it has to be considered by an opinion review committee. So we submitted 5 issues for the OAG opinion office of the Auditor General opinion review committee to consider. So one of those was about the uncertainty of Waka Kotahi funding. So as you were aware, the new government has got different priorities from its predecessor, and there is challenges on the National Land Transport Fund. So it was decided that you would have an emphasis of matter paragraph in the audit report. So an emphasis of matter paragraph is not a qualification. It does not reflect badly on the council. What its intention is to draw the reader's attention to that uncertainty. So that was the only emphasis of matter paragraph that they considered was needed. They considered the disclosures that you now have in about the uncertainty of the community funding for the new community facilities that are proposed as adequate. The climate change retreat, that's a challenge facing New Zealand. There's been added disclosure to the consultation document, and the view of the opinion review committee was that covered that issue off satisfactorily. The council, to meet the requirements under the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, needs to develop land prior to it being sold and subdivided. So you've got to fund that. So you're borrowing to do that and intend to repay those borrowings through the development contributions that are subsequently levied. So you increase your borrowings by $60 million over the 10 years of the long-term plan. And in the balance sheet, you've got negative reserves. So we looked at that. There was additional disclosure made, but where the committee was comfortable as to that was appropriate. So the most challenging issue was that the proposal is originally included in the draft consultation document on affordability of rates, the alternative option in the assessment of the committee wasn't actually a choice in terms of the local government in section 93B, subsection B, but it was reworded, and they're now satisfied that that meets the requirements. So those were the major items, other than the dynamic rates cap that needed to be some clarification as well. It needed to be clear in the document how that was set. So that's where we got to.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And I'll take the opportunity at this point as well, because I think this is the last year that you are the appointed auditor on behalf of Audit New Zealand for Tasman District Council.
Yes.
And over your time as our auditor, it has been an interesting period, spanning some quite challenging issues, of which the latest one, as you've mentioned, is the kind of very changeable policy from central government. But it's also covered a number of other very challenging years that I'm sure we're all aware of the reasons behind those. So I'd just like to thank you for your contribution and time commitment over the last few years as our auditor. And the fact that we have got both audited annual reports and our audited LTPs and annual plans out the door, by and large on time, with minimal concerns raised by Audit New Zealand, has been in no small part due to your contribution. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. With that, I'll come back to Alan. Is there anything more you'd like to add before I open it up for
nothing.
Questions or feedback? All right. Thank you. Okay, so it is there. As you can see, the resolutions are quite fulsome, as they need to be in relation to these. There is a lot of information, both contained within the consultation document, but vastly more in the various attachment statements, strategies, and other information that is provided for people to wade through, should they choose to go to that level of detail. So open for feedback, moving and or seconding as well. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess maybe I'd just like to make a couple of points, and one is to remember that this is a consultation document, and I certainly would encourage the community to have its say, and we've got a number of events and whatnot scheduled around that, so hopefully our community can get engaged. Yeah, I do just want to acknowledge, the point that Alan made. This is 15 months of work by the council staff, but also by us as councillors. We've been engaged with this material for 15 months, so nothing is popping out now for us as a surprise. So definitely acknowledge that the work that's gone on. And, I think we can take some degree of comfort that we've gone through the process with Audit New Zealand. It's really great that we've been able to get that sign off and resolved any issues that they've raised, and I think that we can take good comfort in that. And then I guess maybe the last point is, you're always talking about a balancing act between our affordability and our ratepayers now, but also with an eye to the future. And in a way, it's not about a balancing act, but it's about working with those two completely different issues and trying to find a pathway through. And I think it's really great in this draft of the long-term plan that we're actually signalling a desire to invest in community facilities and putting that out there for the public, because that's about setting our communities up for the future. So I think we've got a few months ahead of us yet with the consultation, but I'm very happy to move the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Maley. Do you wish to speak at this point? Okay, thank you.
I'd echo some of the comments from Councillor Mackenzie, but it's interesting when you look across the country, some of the pressures that are on councils right throughout New Zealand. And I think the biggest issue is the uncertainty in Three Waters going forward, and the issues that over the last 10 years, at times when I've sat around this, we've invested hugely in infrastructure, and that's what we spend the bulk of our money on. And our increase is nowhere near as much as some other councils. You don't have to look too far where you see increases in excess of 20%, because they haven't spent that money on infrastructure. But we've got great uncertainty going forward. And I had a look at, when you look at the detail of some of this, like we've got valued NRSVU of 47 million to replace. Well, it's actually quite a bit north of there if you have to move that plant in time. So we need to be aware of that. So, you know, when you're talking wastewater, you're talking roughly 3 times the price of drinking water. So that's where your real expense comes. And when you have a look at this long-term plan, the Motueka wastewater plant is something that really pushes our debt out in the future. So we've got some workshops on that coming up in the future. But I think we just need to be confident that the rules in relation to Three Waters are not set in stone. In fact, it's quite uncertain what's happening. If you look, I was watching Morning Report on Sunday morning, where the minister was being queried about Three Waters quite vigorously. So that's something that we have to be flexible of going forward. But we need to remember that affordability is a real issue in our community. And our community isn't even. A significant number of our community don't have mortgages. They've retired here. They are reasonably well off. But then we have other sectors of our community that are really, really struggling. So, you know, that's the difficulty you face when you're sitting around this table. But what we've done, this is a consultation document. It goes out. We will get feedback. And then we will have to make decisions. And none of them will be easy going forward. But I'm happy to put this out as it is. It will not be easy when you come to make the decisions. I've never been involved in a long-term plan that has easy decisions yet, because you're always making trade-offs and choices, and that's what we have to do as a community. So I'm happy to support this. It'll be interesting to see the feedback that we get from our community going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Mailing. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, if I may, for you, just a question for our little drain. The consultation document, is that going to be readily available or delivered to every house, and when will that happen?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. The consultation document itself will be available through our council offices and libraries, but there is a special edition of Newsline which will kind of pulls the guts out of the consultation document, which will be going out. I think that's next week. Yeah, I know Mr. Choke's been working that up. So yeah, so the bulk of it's in the Newsline. The consultation document itself, hard copies in libraries and service centres, and obviously online through Shape Tasman.
Just a follow-up question. So is that the Newsline version, a summary of the main consultation document?
Correct, yes. It's a sort of a Newsline special. It just deals with the consultation document, the LTP consultation.
And just to follow on the last two speakers here, it's been a long process getting to here, probably one of the longest we've ever had. Actually, it seems like it's been going for 18 months. And I think there's been a lot of information considered and in the AMPS and in the consultation document and all the supporting documents itself. And there's lots of things for the community to consider, but the main two things I want to emphasise is that we've maintained or increased the roading budget over the term, which I think is a really good thing. And the other thing is Councillor McKenzie alluded to a number of community facilities, and interestingly in the community, in the consultation document, we've given people the option whether they support those or not. I don't think we've done that before, so it'll be interesting to see what sort of reaction we get to those where we've asked for people's support or not. But as I've said, there is a whole lot of things for people to consider, and whether they'll be able to consider them all and make submissions, time will tell. And I guess the quantum behind that will be the number of submissions we get, of course. But just finally, I want to thank all the staff that are here today and those that are not or unwell for the work they've done, because it's been a huge process for staff as well. We're only the front end facing, public facing end of it, but a huge amount of work for all those staff supporting or feeding the information into those officers who have brought the information to us. So we really do appreciate that. And I guess for you now, it'll be a sigh of relief and able to get back to your normal job. So thank you, and particularly a finance team. But of course, then we'll have submission here, discussions, consultation discussions with the community, and encourage submissions and then hearings and then deliberations. So quite a process to go for a year. So thank you all.
Not quite back to the day job.
No, not yet. More for us.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brian. Councillor Butler, then Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say that echo what the previous speakers have said. Different parts of this long-term plan will be in the consultation document, will be relevant to different people. Some will take more interest in some things and some in others. I'd just like to say that it's very gratifying to see that the options for the community on climate change are a big step up from what was available in the previous long-term plan. So I really support the staff and the work that has been done on that. The second thing I'd like to say is that there is a signal at the very end of the plan about the issue of Tākaka wastewater, as has already been mentioned about Motueka. Tākaka wastewater is going to have to be funded in some way because the existing system will be past its use by date. So that is just a little signal that is in the end after 10 years there. So I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. There's a couple of things I want to ask. The first one is there still scope for us to have some more drop-in sessions? So on Saturday, I attended an event with the Welcoming Communities team. And the feed from them is, how do our multicultural groups get to talk in a space where they feel comfortable? So is there scope to have some more drop-ins, and how do we facilitate that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we're very happy to talk about how we can do that. Obviously, relatively short notice, but happy to work through outside this meeting how we can make that happen. Drop-in sessions. Yeah, again, in certain situations they work well, other occasions they don't. So we just need to work through what the best option might be. But yeah, happy to talk outside the meeting.
I think if councillors have specific, like if I've already been approached by one councillor at least, who they are organising or attending meetings, or it's groups they are involved with, who have asked for support from council to provide the information and the support so they can engage. So again, there is a range. There's like the formal council-led kind of program, and then there's things that other people may organise or be part of, and where the information can be provided to enable councillors to engage as well. So I think there are plenty of options that people can use.
Thank you, because I feel it's really important that we acknowledge the diversity within our communities, and that one structure doesn't fit them all. The second thing is this is a consultation document. I guess I as a councillor just want reassurance that when we get the feedback, that there is enough scope for us to acknowledge our community's voices, and that it's not a done, dusted deal. And as already been quoted, it's good to note that, we're asking our community, do they want these facilities? Because there's just as many people now telling me they don't because they can't afford it, although the other side of that spectrum is those going, we desperately want to pull. And my last comment is, it would be me. My last comment is that the stats that we work on regarding our growth, how comfortable are we that in our current market, with the hurt that's going in our community at the minute, that we are going to be able to develop and have the housing and leverage off that growth, when at the minute I see the handbrakes are going on all over the place.
Who wants to speak to that, Dwayne?
I might attempt the last one, and then I'll pass on to Ellen to talk about the scope of change, and I support it if necessary. So in terms of the growth, Briley's behind me, so she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our long-term projections are not inconsistent with the experience, with the growth that we've experienced over the last 10 years, including, following the global financial crisis. So we just have to be a little mindful that that economic cycles generate, peaks and troughs in the way housing is developed. So with that kind of broad answer, I am comfortable that, broadly speaking, our growth assumptions are reasonable. They almost certainly will be wrong. They may be higher, they may be lower. They won't be exactly what we've projected, but broadly they reflect at least what we've got in the past. And it does tend to come in fits and starts. So I'm comfortable with that. And I guess the only other thing I'd point out is it's very much driven by migration into the country and migration to Tasman. So regardless of the short-term economic conditions, that long-term driver will drive some of the growth we're talking about. In terms of the question around the scope for change, well, in terms of those 4 key issues we're talking about, including the community facilities, we have put the alternative options in the consultation document, so that the council, if it elects to, can pick those options in the final LTP, because it has already foreshadowed that those are options. In terms of generally, look, you couldn't go from the CD we're talking about to something that's going to charge twice as much in rates and have twice as much as debt or anything like that. But there are scope around the margin for the final LTP to depart somewhat at the margins from what we've proposed. Did you want to add anything?
Thanks, Dwayne. Anything further? Councillor Hill.
Kia ora, through you, Chair. As has been said, a lot of work, like a huge amount of work has gone in here by a lot of people, and we shouldn't underestimate that. I think in terms of the document itself, I really appreciate how it's framed. I think the writing's pitched spot on, not too technical, not condescending, so that it's accessible in terms of language. And I think that's been done very, very well. A lot of detail for those that want it around something particular. And then there's those, little spaces where people can just tap in and have a look at a certain thing. Oh, here's an option, or could do this or this. And, I think it's just really nicely framed, actually. And I found it easy reading in a way, which is what we're wanting. So thank you for that. I like the whakatauki spread throughout it. So there's sort of an integration there. And I think we list the range of ways. Oh, is that on another document? The ways in which people can get access to the information. And I do think it's up to us all to really be encouraging people to know about it. And I was in the school recently with the class and tried to get the young people interested in having a look and going on Shape Tasman. I mean, that's the gem, isn't it, that people can input pretty easily. So certainly going to support the resolution today. I think, Tim, you look like you're waving at something. Is that me? Maybe not. I don't think someone's walked from the room behind me. Sure, you can still hear me.
Thank you,
just to say, in terms of the numbers, of course, none of us want the rates to go up, but to any sort of extent. But and I think when you pitch it across, I think average in New Zealand, they're talking about 15%, 15+%. I think it's hard to convey, and I don't know whether we'll ever really get a high or reasonable level of appreciation of that we have a regional council function as well. And if you look at some of those, 15+% and up into the 20% of rate rises, some of those outfits they're not a unitary. So it's all a bit uncomfortable, but I think we've done pretty well to sort of pitch where we have. So I'm happy for what we're sending out for sure, as much as we've been able to work it out. I think what we're presenting, to me, there's a really good degree of transparency around what things mean, why the debt would be that, why it wouldn't. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. All right, Councillor Greening and then Councillor Maru.
Yeah, first of all, fully appreciate all the work that's gone on, the 15 months of work that has gone on. But it's also a concern that we get a late circulation of a large volume of documents to consider over a weekend, given we have had 15 months of discussions. And no doubt that's been overwhelming for a number of councillors around the room to try and digest and go through and check that everything's there. And I'll come to a point later in this conversation. I know some have mentioned comparisons to other councils. The pressures across the country are very different. Some have more debt capacity, some don't, hence why some can increase rates lower than others. We don't have massive earthquake rebuilds. We don't have a cyclone recovery. We don't have massive water infrastructure that is failing. But we are embarking on some nice to haves that maybe other councils aren't, because they're trying to invest all their money in some critical infrastructure, which seems to be the major driver across most of the councils. A lot of our costs increases are not necessarily all in CapEx either. A lot of it is in OpEx. And again, it's different to a number of other councils' drivers for rate increases, where their drivers are really in the CapEx front. Mention is made of this consultation document being one that we can consult on, and don't be scared, whatever goes out we'll get feedback on, and that's always the case. But this document is supposed to reflect the wisdom of this council's preferences, and I don't necessarily support the trade-offs and spends that the wisdom of this council is informing the community on. I think the community will be very disappointed, and we're already hearing it already on some of the decisions and trade-offs that this council is proposing as its preference. And some weren't even put on the table at the start, and some were refused to be considered. And those aren't even properly disclosed in the documents that I'm seeing. So I do have a question about that, and I'll come to that in a second. Again, I think for me, and it's interesting hearing some of the words and terminology used by Mr. McKay. It was disappointing that the debate and discussion that we had around the table, where councillors refused to include the theme of affordability, for me really sums up this long-term plan. I don't believe it is affordable. I don't believe it's in keeping with being sustainable. I believe we needed to make some hard decisions, and we've avoided them. I just want to come to one of the AMPs, and I've raised this in an email. I haven't got a response from my email, but it was in reflection, and again, a lot of documents to work through. But I thought in our workshops, we made it clear that we didn't want the possibility of traffic lights in Richmond, very much like Blenheim has chosen not to have traffic lights. And yet I'm seeing words like the possibility of traffic lights still in the documents. So I've circulated some corrections, and I'd just like to know whether these corrections will be acknowledged in the minutes, or whether I need to instigate a resolution to make that correction. And my second point is in relation to, again, another discussion we had about properly reflecting OpEx costs, i.e. regarding the staff costs, the FTE costs. And I thought we were indicating to the community what they were and what we were proposing to do. But again, I can't certainly see it in the document that's going out to the public. And I'm not sure where it is in the much larger consultation plan document either. But I thought we were going to indicate to the community that we were increasing our OPEX costs by something like 50 staff over the first 3 years. And I thought we were going to acknowledge that so people could actually comment on it, and I can't see it anywhere. So it's very difficult for people to understand exactly where our costs are coming in, and it's not all capital. And most of the emphasis in the public consultation document is around capital, but actually most of the discussion I've been having or trying to get onto the table around the council table has been about OPEX costs and being able to save $4 million a year, which cascades out to $40 million across the lifetime of this long-term plan. So, you know, be certainly interested to know where that is in these documents. So maybe someone could answer those two questions. And then just a supplementary, really, which is more administrative, really, just around. Couldn't see any photographs. Normally, we put photographs of all the councillors in the documents. Is that going in, or we decided not to do that this year?
Who would like to touch on? Well, firstly, the traffic lights. Secondly, staff costs, and I don't know who wants to deal with photographs.
Through the chair around traffic lights. So yes, acknowledge there was an exchange of emails between Councillor Greening, myself, Bill earlier this year, where lots of feedback was provided on the traffic asset management plan in particular. And I thought we replied at that time that one of the reasons we don't suggest you in your AMP document, which is a detailed document, preclude a particular type of intersection treatment is because when you get to the intersection, you look at options. And potentially a traffic light is, in fact, the most feasible, cost-effective and best outcome for an intersection at times. Other times it'll be it's a four-way intersection. Other times it'll be a roundabout. And it would seem unwise to cut that off before you've actually got to the individual site that you might need to consider for an upgrade.
So in our workshop discussions, I thought after those emails, that we were making quite clear that we didn't want any traffic lights, and we were ruling out that option.
So if it was a workshop, we obviously didn't make any decision or rule out anything.
Well, we often make directions because that's what the staff
there may
asked
have
for.
been an indicative direction around traffic lights.
Yeah.
But
And I
at
thought that
this
would come
point,
through in the wording.
at this point in time, is there a desire? You're welcome to move an amendment or a change. See if you get a seconder, but I'm not getting the sense that anyone is that keen to necessarily move to rule out traffic lights in the long-term plan in a particular site, as Dwayne said, well in advance of actually looking at the intersection and deciding which the best option might be.
Well, I thought we had.
Well, no, we haven't.
No, clearly it's in the wording, but certainly the discussion around the table, that's why I was surprised to see it, was I thought we had killed that off. That it was not an option.
And as I say, if you want to try and kill it now, you're welcome to attempt that.
Yeah. So I assume that it's not going to be minuted then.
Yes, it will be minuted, the discussion, and no doubt your emails are also a record of your views.
Okay. So you want me to make a resolution then?
I don't want you to, no, but you are. That's not
Well,
my
no.
decision.
Well, normally we can do this two ways. We can either minute it and say this is a correction, an error correction, minuted.
Well, no, we can't minute and
or
make a correction without a resolution. If you want to see,
we've done minutes before.
So if you wish to attempt to make a change, you will need to move a resolution.
Okay, so on the transport AMP, the relevant section which I've referred to, I would move that the possibility of traffic lights is removed from the AMP.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Ellis.
Yeah, in the interest of, I accept what staff say and take that on board and potentially agree that we'll give this an opportunity to see what will happen around the table.
Are there any other speakers in relation to the inclusion or exclusion of the option of traffic lights at a future point, should the design at the time indicate that traffic lights may be a preferable option?
Okay. I'll speak against the motion because First of all, none of us around this table are traffic engineers. That's the first thing we need to know. So I would, when you're looking at an intersection upgrade or change, I'd want to see a detailed engineering report with the cost benefit analysis. Because I see at certain roundabouts now in Richmond, a big tailback already. And our traffic flows are increasing because we're getting more people. So to rule them out now without seeing a proper report, I just think is premature and not the correct way or the right process to follow. So whenever you're doing an intersection upgrade or changes, you need a detailed traffic assessment and a detailed engineered report from competent traffic engineers. And I certainly don't consider myself one of those. And I don't think any of us around the table have actually got that qualification. So that's why I can't support this motion, because you're tying your hands in the future. And I don't think we should.
Thank you, Councillor Mayling. Councillor Hill.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. I think we've hit a low point in my view. You know, that we're gonna, yeah. You know, to take this as an avenue of long-term plan, infrastructure development, that we're going to have amendments, resolution amendments around works that we have no expertise in making decisions around. You know, I think we've hit a bizarre low, really. So I certainly won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Are there any further? Councillor Mara, is your hand up in relation to this item, or I do have you down as the next speaker in relation to other issues?
The next speaker.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any further speakers? If not, I'll come back to Councillor Greening for his right of reply.
Fantastic. So I'd like to call a division on this. I just want to make mention of the fact, and Councillor Mayling has also referred to it, that there are pressure on other areas of our traffic infrastructure. You made mention of another roundabout. That's a result of traffic lights as people try to race around Richmond trying to avoid them. Blenheim, and I know someone's made mention of the fact that now we need to consider this and that. Well, look, we make calls and preferences all the time in our long-term plan, and this is another one of them. And I'm making this because I thought it would be made clear in the workshop that we didn't want to go there. And I wasn't too sure whether this was an error or intended. So certainly the conversations I recall in the workshops where we were providing directions for staff on the EMPs, I thought we had pulled the pin on the possibility of traffic lights. And Blenheim is a good example of a council who are not experts, but as a governance group do not want their town cluttered with traffic lights, and they made that call. And that's why they don't have traffic lights in Blenheim. So to then say that we're discounting expert advice, that's exactly what we can do. We can make that call. And Councillor Mayling's choice is not to make that call, which is fair enough, that's his choice. But we can make that choice. And to suggest that we're not experts, I think, misconstrues the debate, which is around governance and setting some direction. And that's the bounds of the advice that we seek from council staff. So I think that's a bit of a red herring argument, to be perfectly frank. So on that basis, I put it forward. Again, if I don't succeed, then I certainly welcome the consultation. But again, this is not my preference, and I think it's not the preference of many people around town who want to see a lot of traffic lights removed. And it's interesting to note that Gladstone Road's proposal from NZTA didn't include any traffic lights, a series of roundabouts. So because it's better traffic flow. But anyway, I'll see what the vote is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please. Oh, it's a division. Eli, would you like to go through the division?
Yeah. Deputy Mayor Bryant. Councillor Butler. Yes. Councillor Dakey.
Against.
Councillor Dowler.
For.
Councillor Ellis.
For.
Councillor Greening.
For.
Councillor Hill.
Against.
Mayor King.
Yes.
Councillor Mackenzie,
Against.
Councillor Mayling,
Against.
Councillor Maru,
Against.
Councillor Shallcross,
Against.
Councillor Walker.
For.
That was lost 4-9.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second question. OPEX
Yes,
costs?
it's all right. I'm getting there. Just
Yes.
Okay.
Alan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the four choices, the four areas we're particularly seeking consultation on in the LTP, in the consultation document there, seem to me to be quite a big mix of OPEX and CAPEX costs in there. I don't think it's particularly CAPEX biased. In terms of the FTEs, my recollection of where we got to in conversations was that the discussion with the community should be about the services and the levels of services that they desire, and that the level of FTEs is inextricably linked with that. So certainly in our financial sustainability choice, we've got an option of reducing levels of service, which would potentially have an impact on FTEs if the council decided to go down that route. I'll just deal with the photos question at the same time. So certainly over the last several FTEs, we have not included photos of councillors in the consultation document. Often they have appeared in the final version of the LTP or in annual plans or annual reports. So that's probably where we would see that happening on this occasion.
So will there or won't there? I didn't quite understand that.
No,
not in the consultation document, potentially in the final LTP.
Okay,
document.
if it's in the potential final, can we just make sure we're using our profile pictures from the website where we've got all our pictures? Can't hear us.
Yes.
Yep, great, fantastic. So just in relation to the OPEX, just in relation to the OPEX costs, I thought we did have a discussion where we didn't think it was very transparent, and we wanted to highlight that because people.
So Councillor Grady, my recollection is entirely as Alan just stated. Yes, we did have a lot of discussion about staff numbers, FTEs, and the approach that we'd take. And my recollection of where that ended up is exactly the same as Alan mentioned, and that is what is referred to in the consultation document, i.e. get people's feedback on the level of service, all the services that they value or not, and the level of which they would like us to deliver those. The consequences of the decisions on that will have an impact on staff numbers potentially and or staff costs. So I know that after over 15 months, an awful lot of discussion happened around all of these items. But again, my feeling is that what is contained in the consultation document reflects where the council arrived at, both in December and prior to. Councillor Maru.
So I just want to finish off with just calling a division on the voting for this. Thank you.
Yes, I did anticipate that you would do so. So we will do a division on the final vote. Councillor Maru.
Thank you, Mayor King. And firstly, I guess I need to say that it's definitely a new experience sitting around the table than on the other side of the table when it comes to long-term planning and the challenges of meeting everybody's wishes and desires with the balance of rate increases. But I think it's really important to recognise that we've managed to maintain existing discretionary services that we feel are important, i.e. libraries, parks and reserves, the cemetery maintenance, all those sorts of things. And Deputy Mayor Bryant also mentioned the increase in the roading investment and then the significant investment in community facilities. So that is within a 9.76 increase when we're looking at a 15% average nationwide. So I think there's a whole lot of work that's been done that's really positive. And the challenge now comes because like Councillor Walker too, I've started to hear some murmurs about investments in community facilities. So it's the opportunity for now the community to have their say and to have some robust debates. I do want to acknowledge Councillor Greening. I actually really enjoy your questioning and the raised debate, and I look forward to that through the deliberations. But I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maru. Any further comments? It has been moved and seconded, has it not? Right, just before I come back to the mover just before I come back to the mover for a reply, like it has, I think there hasn't been an easy LTP for the last little while. There hasn't really been an easy annual plan for the last little while for a whole range of different reasons. And as Councillor Greening touched on, different councils around the country are facing very different challenges. Some have had large natural events more recently than we have. Others are facing infrastructure deficits. Others are facing challenges around OPEX, as Councillor Murray just mentioned. Others are having to cut back on some of those services which are seen as potentially not core, but as he mentioned, are highly valued by the community. I think the fact that we're going out with a rate increase that is kind of below the average, although not as low as many people would like to see, as well as maintaining those services, providing the community an opportunity to debate investment in community facilities. And I'll be fascinated to see how that plays out in Motueka, because the Motueka councillors have been massive advocates for inclusion in this, to the point that, you know, when there was question marks over its affordability, other councillors with the development contributions, the way that's being funded is by a lot of other parts of the district committing to providing their funding from their reserve financial contributions and the growth that has been providing that money to support Motueka. And it will be fascinating to watch how the Motueka Council has managed to balance what will inevitably be some quite loud feedback about the cost and the opposition to a community facility there, versus those who are, and again, I've been over there recently and just generally in different, very strong about time, you know, it's taken you this long, and a general disbelief that will actually follow through. That is the feedback I've got. You won't actually follow through on this. We've heard this story 10 times before. So fascinating to watch how that all plays out. I think it's important to understand the reason we are probably at the lower end as opposed to the upper end and below the average is because our rates are already reasonably high and our debt is already up there. So, and that is because we have over time made conscious decisions to invest in infrastructure and community facilities. If you look at somewhere like Napier, they're facing, and again, not a regional council, so simply Napier City, 23% rate increase and a debt increasing from $10 million to $500 million over 10 years. Now, they may be coming off a much lower rates per capita and clearly a much lower starting point for debt. But what it also demonstrates is the longer you leave these things to do, they are very, very expensive. So I think we've struck a good balance in terms of a starting point to go out and consult with our community. I think we have acknowledged through the fact that one of our key issues, and I know this provided some challenges through the audit conversation because it's not the traditional way of, or the traditional items that you would choose for a key issue, which are more specific and like the community facilities. So to have financial sustainability as a key issue, I actually do think reflects the concerns that Councillor Greening and others have raised. I think it's also important to just voting against it or being opposed to it it's not just the people who oppose something who have concerns about it. The fact that everyone who may vote today to adopt it, I would hate to think that the conclusion is if you voted against it and recorded your vote down here as nay or no or against, you are concerned about the cost. And if you voted for, you somehow magically are not. And that is 100% not an accurate reflection. I have no doubt that everyone who contributed to this, from the council staff to the councillors through the workshops, are concerned about costs, are concerned about financial sustainability, and are concerned about the impact on the parts of the community who will find this difficult. That isn't necessarily reflected just as to whether you vote yes or no for the adoption of this. So, look, I think with that, the other thing that's been raised, and I think Councillor Murray raised it, coming from, you know, perhaps the other, not the other side, but, you know, having involvement in LTPs from a different perspective previously. When we get feedback, the vast majority of people will provide us feedback about one part of this. It might be the pool in Motueka, it might be the climate change adaptation choices, that might be the financial sustainability component. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury to just focus on one part that we happen to be, you know, particularly concerned about. we are responsible to ensure that all of those things, and when you're trying to balance community facilities against climate adaptation and mitigation, biodiversity against infrastructure investment, yeah, these things, it's not apples and apples. It's not like none of them or any of them are more important than others necessarily. They're all important. So it is going to be phenomenally difficult to take the feedback that we will inevitably get and then bring it back to that overall judgment and balance across everything that we're either required to do in our role as council, or that our community expects us to do in providing them the right mix of both infrastructure and community facilities. So with that, I'll come back to Councillor McKenzie for a right of reply, and then we will go to a vote by division.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Not much more to say other than what you have said, really. You know, but I do want to pick up on the point. I think it's important that we acknowledge the difficulties that some in our communities are currently experiencing, and this won't make it any easier for them. But equally, I think that it's important that we have ambition for our district. You know, we have gone through the pain of investing in a massive piece of 100-year infrastructure, the Waimea Community Dam, which is actually to set up our district for the future. It's not just about how we see the world through our eyes sitting here. It's about what we set up the district, you know, for our children and our grandchildren. So we've got to keep our eye on the long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. And now, Elaine, if you'd like to call the division.
By division, Deputy Mayor Bryant. Councillor Butler. 4. Councillor Dakey.
4.
Councillor Dowler.
4.
Councillor Ellis. 4. Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Mayor King.
4.
Councillor McKenzie. 4. Councillor Mailing.
4.
Councillor Maru.
4.
Councillor Shallcross.
4.
Councillor Walker. 4. Carried 12-1.
Thank you. And again, thanks, just following up on Deputy Mayor Bryant's comments earlier, thanks to everyone who's been involved to this point. Alan, a lot of this revolves around you. I know there are a huge number of other people who contribute to the process, but you are the one that has to try and bring all that together. And I know that has had its interesting challenges over the course of the last 15 months, and particularly during the course of the last kind of 6 to 8 weeks as everything comes to the pointy end. And after, you know, kind of 14 months of talking to us and other council staff, you then have the nice people from audit come in and run their eye over stuff and obviously raise what I believe is a lot of issues that have to be worked through. Despite when we get to the end, that list is narrowed down and shortened up. So I'd really like to just acknowledge your contribution and bringing all that together along with everyone else who's made a contribution. So thank you very much. Yes, you may.
Kia ora koutou. I just want to also say I acknowledge all the staff. John, Mackie, thank you for your work on the consultation document, and the staff over the last 18 months. I've been around the table of many LTPs in a council that's much larger but heavily resourced. And what I see is we're very lightly resourced across this, and many people have worked many overtime hours to get to us this point today through the workshops, etc. So, you know, we run on a lot of goodwill in this organisation. And so we have a lot of staff who are doing overtime and not getting paid for that. So I want to recognise that today. The idea of cutting staff, to me, makes me feel a little bit disappointed, because I think they're not necessarily recognising the work that the staff actually do and how much they give to this organisation and to their community. and with their volunteer hours. So thank you so much, Dwayne and Alan, and the team, but sitting behind, and the team in finance, and all the people who have gone through the AMPs, and all the managers, and all the time. It is just a significant amount of time. So yes, we'll get back to our day jobs, but we'll probably start the next one on the 1st of July, and also, and because actually the reality is that will be the first thing we start, will be the next LTP and the next annual plan. So thank you, kia ora.
Thank you. Just before I close the meeting, there's just one other acknowledgement that I need to make. So Sandra, who has obviously today sat there in relation to the LTP development, but has worked at Tasman District Council since 1985 in a huge number of different roles. And back in the day, even prior to me and Stewie turning up, which is a reasonable chunk of that time. People did a lot, I guess, a broader range of roles. People over time, the organisations gets bigger, people's roles become more specific and narrower. However, Sandra has fulfilled a huge number of roles over that time. Elections, a big part of that over the period of time as well. A lot of contributions to strategic processes and planning processes over that extensive period as well. And very different world we live in now than we lived in or worked in 1985. So Sandra, I'd just like to acknowledge your massive contribution to the Tasman District Council over that whole period of time. And I have a small presentation of our appreciation. And I know you don't really like making a fuss or being made a fuss of, but we thought collectively that it was something that had to be acknowledged. So.
Good on you, Richard.
Oh, geez. There's a little puddle under the desk. I don't know quite what that indicates. Right. With that, I will close the council meeting, and I'll finish with karakia. Kua mutu mātou mahi mō tēnei wā, manakitia mātou o mātou, hoa o mātou whānau katoa, au ki te aorangi e tau mai ana. Kia ora everybody, thank you.
I want to talk about the workshop.